I set such high expectations of myself. Perfection is not the end goal, it's freedom. It's never enough at that point in your head, which is so scary looking back. I barely have any photos of myself back then now, because just looking at them I'm just like, how were you not seeing that? If moving my body is a punishment, you're moving your body in a way that makes you feel strong and empowered. Hello everybody. It's lovely and sunny, but I just wanted to come on here and probably do a bit of a quicker chatty video today, but just to talk about, you've probably seen from the title, my eating disorder story and sort of what helped me recover from that, and just go into a little bit more depth about that, as I know I don't think I've actually spoken about it massively. Over on my Instagram I do my progress photos and sort of little updates here and there, but I thought I would do a proper sit down chatty video just going through a little bit about it for me and sort of what helped in my recovery. I know this really isn't an easy topic to talk about or even listen to. If you take anything from this, just know I know how isolating it can be to struggle with control and body image and thoughts around food, so just know you're not alone and recovery is possible. So a little bit about my backstory is, for me, my eating disorder first manifested sort of around age 15, and it came or stemmed from anxiety around exam and school stress. I was someone who, through no fault of my own, it wasn't my family's pressure or anything like that, I set such high expectations of myself academically that my brain was just going 100 steps ahead of where it needed to be. It was sort of along the thought process of, oh my god, if I don't pass my GCSEs, I'm not going to get into college. If I don't get into college, I'm not going to go to uni, and if I don't have a job, and I'm just this failure, which was just completely irrational. And looking back now, I'm just like, what were you worrying about? But I was so consumed by it and just the unknown and having lack of control around my future, that the only thing I could control in that time was my food intake and my exercise. So that anxiety sort of manifested in control around my food and eating. And I was never a particularly unhealthy person. I've always been an active girl. I was a dancer from like the age of 15. Sort of my family were always very healthy. We were always going for walks, and I used to run with my dad and sort of all of that. So I never had anything to worry about sort of physically. I was always a very healthy person. So I think it purely came for me from my internal anxieties around needing a control and needing to know answers about stuff that I just did not have answers to at that age. So with that uncontrolled anxiety and that sort of lack of control about things, that being healthy and monitoring my eating and my exercise very quickly came into quite an obsession. And I know I've got quite an addictive personality, so it very quickly just sort of escalated, and I was tracking everything. I couldn't sort of go out for a meal without knowing that I burnt off sort of X amount of calories before, and it very quickly became that one thing that I could control, but to a very, very unhealthy degree. And then because at that point my sort of future was still very much unknown, my sense of self-worth very quickly came fixated on my body image and sort of my outward look at sort of that point. So obviously being teenage girls and being in that high school, very unhealthy mindset, and obviously the time that it was sort of in the 2000s, it was getting compliments on being skinny and being slimmer, and you sort of latch onto those things, and it's hard to explain. It's just, it's never enough at that point in your head, which is so scary looking back, because I barely have any photos of myself back then now, because just looking at them I'm just like, how were you not seeing that? But it just consumes your brain so much that it's so scary, and you find ways to cover it up. I was always in baggy clothes. I would sort of not go to social events. I would avoid lunches and stuff at school, so people wouldn't like pick up on these behaviours that I knew I was doing to a degree, but you're just in denial. You're hiding it so much. So for me, this cycle probably went on for around 18 months, 2 years, to the point where I was sort of very much restricting my food intake and over exercising. And it came to the point where sort of family had a bit of an intervention, and school specifically had pulled my family, I think, aside and was just like, she is not healthy enough to carry on her exams, and getting to the point where it's like she may have to be pulled out of school to resit the year, which going back to my triggers about being a failure and succeeding at school was just completely counterproductive. Like, my whole thing was that I wanted to do well in school, and now I'm getting to the point where it's like, you may actually be held back a year. So for me, that was probably my, like, aha moment. Like, my turning point in my head was like, right, okay, this isn't the right thing. This isn't what's good. So that for me is probably where the intervention started. Up until that point, I had no treatment. I wasn't going to therapy and stuff just because I'm a very stubborn person. I didn't want it. I wasn't willing to accept I had a problem. And your family sort of, it's hard. They don't want to cross those boundaries with you. They want to support you and sort of look after you. But it was getting to a point where it's probably a little bit uncontrollable. So that turning point for me, where it was like, you're not actually helping your future here. Your brain is being very counterproductive to the initial concern. So that was probably my turning point, where it was like, right, you need to start recovering, you need to get better. So that's a little bit like the backstory for me, and just trying to have a little bit of an insight into younger Daisy's brain about what that was for me. And like, there is loads more that I could talk about, but probably isn't going to be helpful. So at that point where I needed or figured out that I wanted to start recovering, because I was just so physically and mentally exhausted, that it got to the point where it's like, we need to make a change. For me, recovery was not linear, and I did go through quite a number of years of a binge eating cycle, and over time there was just so many toxic traits that I had to unlearn and sort of reteach and rewire my brain around food and around exercise and control, that came from a mixture of sort of educating myself, family support, therapy, all of that. It just needed to rewire those brains and basically just teach yourself that nothing bad is going to happen, which can take time and is terrifying, and becoming unfixated on numbers isn't going to just happen overnight, but it's possible. It's that shift of wanting to control my body to actually wanting to take care of it. Instead of using food as something I used to fear, you start seeing it as something you need to fuel yourself. And instead of using exercise as a tool of punishment, you start seeing it as a way that celebrates the way you can move your body in a way that it makes you feel good, rather than punishing yourself for something you ate. Instead of moving my body as a punishment, you're moving your body in a way that makes you feel strong and empowered. So use that support around you, whether that is professional help, family, friends. Confide in those people that can support you through the recovery, because it's not going to be easy and you can't do it by yourself. So lean on those professionals for that support. Educate yourself. Use family going through struggles, sort of people who support your recovery and want you to do better, are the people that you need around you. Obviously, the point at which you want to go back into exercise during your recovery is going to vary from individual to individual, if that is even a goal of yours. But for me, as someone who was always active, shifting that mindset to being strong and being fit and powerful was just an amazing tool for me, because I was using my body and needing to fuel my body to be able to do what it does now, rather than feeling so drained and tired all the time. You're celebrating your body for what it can do and not what it looks like. Give up the food labels. Foods aren't good or bad. Yes, some foods are obviously going to be better for us than others, but it's not the end of the world if you eat something bad. Just learn to trust your body again and just give it what it needs. And having those labels around food is just gonna restrict you and confine you to those categories, or think you've done something wrong because you had a bad food, which isn't the case. You're human. We are here to enjoy food. And now some of my best memories are, oh my God, do you remember when we ate this, or when we went to this place? And you see it everywhere, but memories over macros all the time. And getting rid of those food labels about good or bad foods is the first step to sort of shifting that mindset around food. And we've heard it time and time again, but comparison is the thief of joy. So stop comparing yourself to others and recognize your body for you. Recognize that you're so much more than your body. Your personality, your intelligence, everything is so much more worthy than what your body looks like. Another tool that helped me in my recovery was self-compassion. So give yourself some grace. Recovery is going to take time, and you're going to have blips and days where you're like, your head maybe isn't being your best friend, but just remember that perfection is not the end goal, it's freedom. So those are just a few tips that helped me in my recovery. And if you do have any struggles or any questions, you can always message me. I will always respond to DMs and people who need support around that. And if you are struggling right now, please know that it does get better. And it might not feel like it right now, but healing is so worth it. You deserve a life that is not ruled by exercise and confined by food. If my story does resonate with you, please reach out to someone you trust, reach out to someone who you know will support you, or message me. You are not alone in this. So probably wrap this up here, but thank you for watching. And if you found it useful, please give it a like or share it with someone who you feel might need it. And as always, please look after yourselves. Have a fantastic week, and I will catch you in the next video.